This this has become pathological. This is almost like a condition. This is some sort of mental illness. It's like a Caitlin Tourette's, or I don't know, a Haitlin Tourette's.
Breaking. The announcement has caused shockwaves in the Caitlin Clark of the basketball world just won AP's Athlete of the Year honor, and the sports behemoth, Nick, is unable to manage it. That disregarded Clark's historic season is currently being criticized harshly.
Can't we just acknowledge Caitlin Clark changed the WNBA? That's it. It's
the WNBA Media response, to put it simply, it's increasing. What's raising eyebrows in the sports world actually occurring in the background? Why is everyone is going crazy over this unprecedented victory? And more crucially, the reason. Did Nike say nothing regarding Clark's accomplishments during the season? The drama unfolding is larger than basketball.
Deal. Now, since she has signed this contract, you guys, and her WNBA season has come and gone. And with that, Nike has not done one thing to promote her. We have not seen any commercials. We have not seen any ads. We have not seen any Caitlin Clark merchandise. And we for sure as hell have not seen any Caitlin Clark.
All during Clark's historic Nike basketball season, social media remained oddly silent. This wasn't just a straightforward mistake that created a picture of purposeful evasion that resulted in basketball fans who are baffled.
Was it the new WNBA commissioner who suggested that the entire WNBA should have been on the cover of the Time magazine honor for Caitlin Clark, Marvin?
It was the owner of the Washington Mystics.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So I don't know who this person is, but felt like if you're going to celebrate the WNBA, why not celebrate it with everybody in the WNBA or some of the bigger stars and Caitlin Clark? But if you're Time's Person of the Year, it's not the People of the Year.
Let's take a break. Criticized Nike's social media conduct when Clark was surpassing their previous score marks. Feeds that included everything but her accomplishments as of December 21st. They are sharing information about Jugo Watkins' donation, nightmares for defenses, while Clark was attracting larger audiences than most NBA. Nike was busy promoting the UConn during the games as the future of the USC matchup. Basketball.
This is a unique moment. Caitlin Clark did for the WNBA what Wayne Gretzky did for the NHL when he went to the LA Kings. It's okay.
The irony. In comparison to some of the, Nike has identified her as one of the futures. Completed her rookie year already, but others are still being established in college, but Nike decided to appear the alternatively, crafting a story that obligingly left out the sport's greatest rising star. Their quiet turned into even more apparent at pivotal times when Clark struck that stunning logo shot versus the Ohio State Nike. The Twitter account for basketball was sharing clips from earlier matches in which she shattered the record for radio silence. They seem to be working in a alternate reality in which Clark's accomplishments didn't exist.
You don't have to go, oh my God, these people are mad, or this person's mad, or this group is mad. Is it Caitlin Clark?
Oh my God, you don't have to go. Reached you, and you are aware that these individuals are mad, this individual's mad, or this group's. Is it crazy that Caitlin Clark has changed?
Fathers of the WNBA did. You're not. She's the Time Person of the Year. That's all. The league won. But every time we think there's a win, there's somebody who brings something else up.
Marketing professionals have begun considering Nike's approach. Here's a player who does more than merely win games. She is changing people's perceptions of TV ratings for women's basketball have increased. Every time she performs, arenas are sold out. She's delivering fresh things months in advance. Large number of sports fans, but Nike, a business that established its reputation by identifying and commemorating those who made the decision to keep quiet. The numbers reveal an fascinating tale of Clark's games. continuously drew in viewers that competed in significant men's sporting competitions. Within hours of its release, the shirt was sold out. Every arena she went to had a record. Attendance isn't limited to sports. Nike's marketing is gold, according to statistics, appeared more inclined towards manufacturing stars instead of recognizing the one organically emerging before their eyes. Their social media accounts pattern became nearly foreseeable, and they'd post about the next collegiate athletic events, showcasing well-known WNBA players and display bright potential. But Clark's name was conspicuously missing even when she was shattering records that represented. Nike's approach over the decades was to advertise regular season for other players' performances. The disparity evened out more starkness when examining their. Nike did not provide any coverage of other athletes' issue with acknowledging accomplishments thus far not as good as Clark's. They'd design complex social media marketing for regular league games, but was unable to. Don't forget to tweet about Clark's historic when they were approaching the UConn versus the USC game in particular. Nike's marketing machine raised concerns, going into overdrive, claiming it to be the largest. Currently, the basketball game at college. The community was unable to ignore this promotion arrived at the perfect moment. For her, Clark was creating headlines. Extraordinary accomplishments, the AP. The prize for Athlete of the Year ought to have. This was Nike's wake-up call. Unquestionable evidence of Clark's influence. Acknowledgement that went beyond basketball, but more silence in their reaction. But other sports companies were quick to congratulate Clark. Nike continued to have their odd, acting as though she didn't exist. This quiet went beyond social media all season long. Nike's advertisements for marketing efforts and advertising materials appeared to be carefully designed to not even mention Clark when talking about the prospects for women's. In basketball, they would draw attention to other gamers, crafting a story that notably left out the sports. Business Insider's biggest draw began making assumptions regarding the causes of. Some speculated that Nike's actions might be connected to a future contract discussions. Some questioned whether it revealed more serious problems with Nike's strategy for women's sports. Regardless of the cause of their growing silence, it's getting harder to ignore the effects of this tactic began to manifest. Basketball enthusiasts, in surprising ways, observed the trend and resorted to social to highlight the hashtag number the media indication, while Clark began to trend every time Nike shared information regarding women's basketball without bringing her up. Accomplishments, the business's quiet was turning into a narrative in and of itself. What makes this circumstance is quite intriguing is Nike's track record of supporting transformational athletes. Here is the business that supported Colin when others wouldn't. Kaepernick created whole campaigns centered around honoring athletes who transformed their sports, but Clark and they decided on a new route, and the consequences for business are also worthwhile to take into account. While Nike centered on creating narratives regarding hoop's future, Clark was, in fact, she was building that future, attracting new viewers to women's basketball, smashing attendance records, and generating hitherto unheard of interest in the sport. From a purely commercial standpoint, Nike's quiet seemed more and more like a lost chance. Their strategy for the AP award announcement was flawless, captured the entirety of their season approach, whereas other companies and sports companies hurried to offer congratulations. Clark. Nike remained silent about it, seemed to be hoping that by not recognizing her accomplishments, they would in some way lessen their importance of this technique in the future. Might be expensive for Nike. Clark's impact on basketball for women keeps improving. Her drawing skills, ratings, and audiences haven't decreased. If anything, her appeal has grown beyond conventional basketball fans who watch. Nike's unwillingness to accept her influence may become the subject of marketing research. classes as an instance of a lost chance. The difference between Nike's quiet and the real effect of Clark on the sport could not be more remarkable, as they were occupied with marketing Clark's future, actively changing the current situation. She wasn't merely engaging in basketball games, she was changing the perception of women's sports that tear down walls and create fresh opportunities for upcoming generations. Nike's quiet as the season went on evolved beyond merely a marketing choice. It turned into a declaration in an attempt to steer the conversation regarding women's, in the end, basketball's future, pointing out their own shortcomings in acknowledge and honor genuine, when it first appeared, transformative talent, organically instead of by means of their meticulously planned marketing campaigns. The response of the WNBA media to not only was Clark's AP award unique, but served as a master tutorial on how to avoid. Every time Clark's name is spoken, a rising star appeared. It set off a strange ceremony. It revealed more serious problems within the. Let's begin with the media culture of the league. The prompt reaction to her AP award, rather than commemorating this historic accomplishment through the official WNBA outlets, could hardly bring themselves to repost the AP article with no highlights or compliments. Real didn't understand what this meant. For women's basketball, a straightforward repost as though they were discussing a daily ritual schedule of games, but the true drama changes in the way the media discussed. It almost became humorous. Clark and you could forecast just how each conversation regarding they would mention her first. Then, Clark's success was like clockwork. They would quickly mention Angel Reese. If that wasn't sufficient, they would add allusions to Guga and Paige Buers Watkins. They would conclude with a lesson in the history of WNBA legends from decades ago. This trend grew so expected that enthusiasts would begin creating WNBA media interviews with bingo cards. Angel Reese's obligatory mention turned into the free area in the center. It wasn't only. This is being done by one or two commentators, dispersed throughout the WNBA media, like a virus, which is what caused this. What was really odd was how distinct it was to Clark when other athletes received honors or destroyed records that the media didn't have issue honoring each of them separately. However, with Clark, every accomplishment had to include a disclaimer with each. Every celebration required a footnote. A history lesson was necessary for milestone. The podcast circuit grew especially, exposing that each host would tie oneself in tangles while attempting to avoid taking sole credit for anything that Clark does. They would begin talking about her influence on viewership before swiftly shifting to conversation regarding the entire rookie class. They'd recognize her record-breaking performances, followed by an instant launch into contrasts with athletes from social media only in different ages. WNBA amplified this behavior. Commenters would cite Clark's tweet accomplishments with what became known as the list. Appears to be a required roll call of more players who had to be stated. That it seemed to be complimenting Clark alone was in some ways demeaning to the throughout women's basketball's history. The way statistics were handled by the media became very intriguing. When Clark broke records, they would begin talking on how the game was unique, how the regulations have altered the way that playing fashions had changed. But when other players at the moment accomplished, these contextual talks are landmarks. Inexplicably vanished press meetings that become drills in. Reporters who use verbal gymnastics would begin inquiries concerning Clark with extensive acknowledgments of other contributions made by athletes to the sport becomes so commonplace that supporters might mouth, as well as the preambles prior to receiving to the real queries. This produced an unattainable benchmark for Clark personally. She was unable to simply play basketball and honor her accomplishments in every publication conference. She had to turn into a basketball historian, recognizing before she could generations of gamers discuss her own game alone, without any other players, faced the irony of this assumption. In fact, behavior emphasized Clark's impact greater than any simple, the media's coverage could. Frantic efforts to diminish her accomplishments simply highlight how they had an incredible need to always put her success in context, demonstrated how extraordinary it. Broadcasts on television were not exempt. One of the commenters created an odd tendency to bring up other players. Every time Clark produced a spectacular play, the logo three-pointer was not only a fantastic shot, references have to come after it. To all the other gamers that would ever try to no-look pass but was unsuccessful, just be honored. A genealogy was required of comparable passes in basketball for women. The history of the online basketball community began to see this trend and pointing out the compilation made by fans. Videos featuring the same people of the media, discussing the accomplishments of other players, without feeling compelled to provide a list of their before the difference was pronounced and unavoidable behind the. According to seen sources, this wasn't just arbitrary actions that were. Apparently, there are unwritten guidelines on how to cover. Clark doesn't give her any recognition without. Don't draw attention to her by discussing others' accomplishments devoid of historical background. Don't recognize her influence without distributing the recognition that this produced. An odd dynamic in which Clark's real play nearly took a backseat to the media's practice of placing it in context. History lessons based on games. Highlights were turned into historical homage reels. Players and informal festivities of outstanding basketball turned into intricate discussions about legacy and acknowledge the influence on young athletes. The viewing was really worrisome. They observed how Clark was handled by the media, achievement, and discovered a worrisome lesson. Exceptional accomplishment doesn't win you the privilege of standing by yourself in the highlight every victory that has to be communicated. Each celebration needs to be qualified. Each and every instance of personal genius needs to be diluted with collective acknowledgement. Of a few seasoned WNBA players began to voice concerns about this trend. If cautiously, they recalled their own ascent to fame and observed how the way the media covered it was different when they won awards or set records. Clark was not permitted to merely celebrate. Considering that same freedom, marketing experts noted how this media strategy was truly harming the WNBA's opportunity for growth rather than leveraging Clark's fame to draw in new admirers. The ongoing requirement to put her in context. The sport was appearing insulated because their success and wary new visitors attracted by lectures about Clark's play were being given basketball history as opposed to being permitted to only take pleasure in the game. The P. Award coverage in its finest form. This issue, rather than utilizing this, a chance to demonstrate how women's basketball was becoming more and more popular, it was transformed into another by WNBA Media phase of their continuous battle to recognize the personal influence of Clark, while frantically attempting to disseminate the give sponsors and advertisers credit. Watched this develop with increasing anxiety. They recognized a once-in-a-generation person in Clark, ability that goes beyond athletics, but the media's need for qualification. Each accomplishment made it more difficult to create captivating stories about her success in comparison to how other. The way that sports treated their stars was remarkable. Stephen Curry's revolutionary. He wasn't needed to shoot baskets in basketball to give each outstanding shooter who arrived credit. Prior to him, when Tom Brady violated the NFL documents, he wasn't supposed to provide a lesson on quarterback history, evolution, but Clark was unable to. One highlight reel without any media, transforming it into a thorough evaluation of the history of women's basketball. As the season went on, similar behavior began, impacting the actual game coverage. Broadcasters appeared more intent on keeping their cautious equilibrium of acknowledgement rather than calling the Exciting moments in the game were cut short by making long digressions regarding other players, historical background, and required citations. The future of contemporaries. The ramifications of this media strategy are regarding if the WNBA wishes to expand it, must allow its stars to shine, ongoing requirement to be qualified, and put Clark's achievements in perspective. It's not only impacting her and establishing a standard for the possible treatment of future stars. It's fostering an environment where it is always necessary to balance excellence when there must always be a common celebration where a qualified look is always necessary for success. The WNBA media will soon face a significant option. They can carry on with their present method of diluting each Clark accomplishment with required comments and historical background, or they can discover how to honor excellence for what it is. The success of one individual doesn't degrade the legacy of others by choice will probably decide not just way the tale of Clark is presented, but how the next women's basketball generation, the AP Athlete of the Stars, is covered. The Year Award is only the start of the effect of Clark on women's basketball as the WNBA and Nike media rush. One way to manage the story is there will be a noticeable shift whether do you believe they'll ever be ready? Accept Clark's star power reduction in its whole. Your opinions in the space provided below. If you liked this analysis on basketball politics, hit that like button. Don't forget to ring that bell and subscribe to get all of our most recent information on the evolution of women's basketball.